remember this.
Yeah,
I am not a delusional Gamecock fan. I speak truths whether people like it or not.
I got you, brother. All right. So we got VigTube and Twisted Rooster on the show today. I appreciate them for coming on here to start conference week, but we want to look at the South Carolina Gamecocks. What they did last year was incredible. I would say I do want to get Rooster's take on it. 8-5 last year overall. You lost the bowl game though, but 8-4 in the regular season. That's I'd say that's a pretty good year.
It
Yeah,
was because of the way
QT.
we ended.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
It was the way
QT's.
because of the way we ended.
Yeah, QT says that South Carolina is going to go 10-2 or 11-1.
Well, I
It's a bit of a
I, I like QT's enthusiasm. Here's what if South Carolina's going to get to a record like that, and this is what bit us last year. We beat two really good teams at the end of the season, correct?
Yeah.
You guys would say between Clemson and Tennessee.
Absolutely.
But we also lost to Missouri and a bad Florida team. You can't lose to bad teams if you want respect and you want to be relevant in college football.
So how does that work though? Because it's amazing. You mentioned you lose to really bad teams like Florida, and I think you said Missouri too. I got it pulled up here. Let me check. Yeah, Florida team like South Carolina, and I'm not saying this to troll or anything. Like, serious question. Like, how do you lose games like that? But then all of a sudden you turn around and you beat top 10 teams like Tennessee and Clemson. I mean, it's incredible, man.
Basically, you can say our offensive coordinator last year, even though he wasn't fired nationally, let's just say he was relieved. And I don't care, our offense coordinator was really good friends with Shane Beamer. He was actually in Shane Beamer's wedding. Shane Beamer, a lot like Nick Saban, is not going to, and Kirby Smart too, also, however you want to say it. They're not going to put a bad name on their friends, right?
Right.
But basically, he was relieved after the Florida game of offensive play calling. And people will say, well, Beamer said no, he wasn't. All you have to do is look at offensive style between the Tennessee and Clemson game. Look at the style of offense they ran versus what they were running prior to that.
Yeah.
That was the difference. But I'm just saying, we had two terrible games. We struggled all year, and then they had to make a change.
Yeah, I mean, you guys started out with a pretty good win over Georgia State. You beat teams like Charlotte and South Carolina State. You're going to win those games. Big wins for South Carolina, though, from their standpoint. You got to beat Kentucky, which you did. You beat Texas A&M. You beat Vanderbilt. I mean, these are teams that, sometimes you can expect South Carolina to possibly struggle with. You knocked those games out of the park and did pretty good. But then you it seemed like you just kept getting momentum as the season went on. You had a couple roadblocks, but then you capped it off with beating your rival for the first time in 7 years, I think. I mean, Clemson's been getting to you guys.
I don't know what it is. There must be a wreck down the road, but everybody in the world that has a ambulance is driving by right now. But yeah, we did. We struggled. Hey, this is your area there, Ballard. I'm over here in Largo, Florida, next to Tampa. So you know how they like to wreck cars over here.
Yeah.
But I mean, it actually was a struggle all year. If you kind of look at the games, very rarely were we ahead enough to feel comfortable. You know what I mean? And then our rush defense was terrible too. I mean, we were 120th, maybe even worse in rush defense.
Yeah.
You gotta stop the run, and that's what Florida did to us. They ran all over us. And then Missouri just kept running the same play over and over against us, and we never stopped it. And you can't do that because that failed us in the past. Kentucky ran the Wildcat against us back in the day, and it was like we could never stop it. So you got to come up with something, a better game plan.
Yeah.
This year we have a new defensive line coach. We have a new offensive coordinator. Things are going to change. It's simplified. The play calling is a lot more simple. It's a lot more read stuff for Spencer Rattler to read on his own without doing the checks back with the sideline. So I think you're going to see a lot of improvement on the offense. I just hope our defense can improve.
Absolutely. And with that being said, you kind of lead us into, let's go ahead and add this to the screen. I'll zoom in a little bit too. We can take a look at their schedule. We've kind of done some exercises on Twisted Rooster's channel.
Yeah.
Right out the gate, it's going to be tough with North Carolina, but then you get a team in Furman. It's literally like a roller coaster. Furman, Georgia, Mississippi State, Tennessee. Get a bye week. I think that's good timing there. Florida, at Missouri, at Texas A&M, Jacksonville State, Vanderbilt, Kentucky, and then Clemson. So overall, I mean, I got a list for myself. I would consider the trap games. These are games that you should win, but probably could lose, not will lose. Got to be careful with A&M. Got to be careful with Missouri. Got to be careful with Florida. These are teams that South Carolina is probably going to be better than, but teams that they got to be careful against. The possible upsets, you could probably pull upsets against UNC, the VOLS, Georgia, and Clemson. And
are those upsets?
Well, I'm not calling the upsets. I'm just saying that if we had to break the games into two categories.
Oh, you mean teams that they could beat, you mean teams that they could upset. Okay. I was about to say a loss to Georgia wouldn't be an upset. But a win would.
A win.
Well, right now I think the UNC game is basically a pick 'em. It was, I think UNC was favored by 2, but it's dropped to a pick 'em now, unless something's changed in the past couple of days. The Vols, we will be an underdog to because we're playing in Tennessee.
Yes.
Georgia, we are underdog to because we are playing in Athens. And Texas A&M will definitely be an underdog too because we had to go to Kyle Field. In my opinion, those are the 3 toughest games for South Carolina because you're on the road and you're traveling. Missouri, they're not going to overlook, and I'll tell you why. Because we've lost to them 4 years in a row. So that won't. I don't think that's going to be a trap game. That's going to be posted that they have lost 4 in a row to Missouri. That'll be in the locker room all week long during that game. I was leaning towards Mississippi State being a trap game for us, and I'll tell you why. Because you got Georgia the week before, you got Tennessee the week after.
And they might overlook for Tennessee.
And you're coming off a Georgia game.
Right.
And depending on what happens in the Georgia game, if you go out there and you get your butt whooped like we did last year against Georgia, what's the morale in the locker room going to be? Now, if you go out there and compete with Georgia and you have a great game, whether you win or lose, you're going to be a little pumped up. But you just have to be careful not to overlook Mississippi State and look towards the Tennessee game in week 5. So that's kind of the one for me. That's a trap. The Clemson game it's tough.
It's got to be a possible upset, right? I think, did we lose Rooster again?
To call rivalry games? Yeah, it's this area I'm in. Am I back?
You're back.
Okay, but it's always tough to call rivalry games when 2 teams are competitive. I mean, 31-30 last year, you don't get much more competitive than that. So it's hard to say. The advantage of South Carolina, that one is we do get them at home.
Right.
So, and I did my prediction going through this schedule, and as a realistic Gamecock fan, I'm saying we're going to finish somewhere probably 8-4 to 9-3, and we could. I don't know if Spencer Rattler gets hurt. Hell, we could be a 6-16. But you can't call injuries.
That's the thing. You cannot call injuries, and it's so hard to put their floor in place. Like, I don't know if it's – I think you guys have to go 500 this year, right? You got to get back to the bowl game.
Yeah, at least.
But I would agree with you. I think I'm going to stick to 8-4 at most, and I'm going to give you the losses real quick too. I'm going to say North Carolina gets you week 1. Now, you could upset. You could upset right out the gate, and that'll, prove me wrong at 9-3. But I got North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, and Clemson.
Yeah.
Would
I have
that pretty much be the category we're going?
Yes, I have South Carolina going 8-4, but I actually had them beating North Carolina by them losing to A&M. So
okay, and again, that's that's a list on the list of trap games for me.
Yeah, and Vic and I agreed on this because we did the preview on his, and I think we were both that A&M's a tougher game than North Carolina, and I'll tell you why. Last time we played North Carolina, we blowed them out, and North Carolina does not have their defense is just as bad as South Carolina's was last year. Their passing defense was 100 and damn near as low as you can get in Power 5 football, or you know what I'm saying, D1 football. Yeah. North Carolina's defense was bad. Yeah. Bad. Just was bad. Theirs was bad in passing, ours was bad in rushing. South Carolina's going to be able to pass the ball. With Spencer Rattler, the wide receivers we have, and the tight ends that we have. Not our quarterback room right now doesn't lean to be a powerhouse running back room. So we're going to rely on the throw. If North Carolina doesn't get better against the pass, Spencer Rattler's going to go out there and light them up. And he's going to take the challenge of Drake May to heart. Because that's all the talks about Drake May being the Heisman candidate. And if you don't think a competitor like Spencer Rattler is going to take that as a challenge, he's going to take that as a challenge.
See, you made a good point I didn't even think about doing. You brought up Spencer Rattler. Spencer Rattler was a 5-star too. Let's not forget that. He's got some talent in him. Now, I don't know if it's what it was made out to be. He wasn't the worst that Oklahoma's had. He transfers over to South Carolina, and he seems to do okay. The quarterback battle in that first game, I know I have it as a loss, but like I said, it's a possible upset. I think it's going to come down to quarterback play. And I guess I just kind of looked at it going into it, Rooster, as I looked at the returning production for North Carolina, and I didn't look too much into South Carolina's chances. You know what I'm saying?
Well, like I said, we returned Spencer Rattler. We returned our number 1 wide receiver from last year, Juice Wells, 900, almost 1,000 yards. He was actually number 2 receiver in the SEC last year, or at least the SEC East, behind, I think, Hyatt as far as yardage. But we also added to our tight end room, which I think we improved our tight end room. It's just... For me, on our offense, we have to see how our offensive line performs and how our running back room is going to perform. But I think as far as their passing game, I think South Carolina is going to have a good one. To me, the biggest question is going to be whose defense can stop who. Because I think it's going to be a scoring game, if you want my honest opinion. North Carolina's good at running back. They do have Drake May, but South Carolina is also really good at defensive back, and we saw that against Tennessee last year.